Hey guys, tonight we embark on a surprisingly serene journey back to the 18th century, where the sun-drenched landscapes of the Americas meet the earnest endeavors of Spanish missionaries. Picture a vast, untamed wilderness, dotted with quaint mission settlements, where men and women strive to bring their faith to vibrant, indigenous cultures. It's a setting ripe with history, filled with the rustling of leaves, distant bird calls, and the scent of sun-baked earth. However, amidst these noble pursuits, you might think, you probably won't survive this, but don't worry, you're merely here to relax and drift away. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to drop your location and local time in the comments, because I'd love to know when and where you're joining me on this journey. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Spanish missionary work in the Americas began in earnest following the Age of Exploration, particularly in the 17th and 18th centuries. These missionaries were not just religious figures, they were cultural emissaries, navigating a complex web of interactions with indigenous peoples. Tasks that might seem trivial today, such as learning native languages and converting local populations, took immense time and effort. Imagine yourself in their sandals, learning new dialects and customs, often under the sweltering sun, with hopes of salvation hanging in the air like the scent of blooming wildflowers. While their intentions were often noble, spreading Christianity and education, many of these missionaries also came with the burdensome weight of their cultural prejudices. Historians still argue whether their impact was primarily benevolent or harmful. As you settle in, consider the paradox of their existence. They were motivated by a deep sense of faith, yet operated under a colonial framework that often disregarded the very cultures they sought to uplift. Daily life in these missions was a tapestry woven from routine, labor, and often a bit of drudgery. You would wake up at dawn, perhaps to the sound of a rooster crowing, which was not a novelty, but rather a daily alarm clock for the dedicated missionaries. The day would unfold with prayers, followed by communal meals that likely consisted of simple, sometimes bland offerings. Think of that soggy bread from Section 3. Imagine the taste of a poorly baked loaf, slathered with whatever preserves were available, while conversing with fellow missionaries about the day's plans. In between formal duties, ranging from teaching local children about Christianity to farming the land, missionaries would often take time to learn about the indigenous cultures around them. This was not merely an act of curiosity, it was a necessity for effective communication and relationship building. They had to bridge the gap between vastly different worldviews. It's fascinating to think that these interactions could be seen as early versions of cultural exchanges, akin to what we experience today in our globalized world. Alongside their daily routines, spiritual practices defined these missionary settlements and were integral to their communal life. You might picture a rustic chapel, perhaps built of adobe or wood, where the air was thick with incense and the sound of hymns echoed off the walls. The missionaries conducted mass, celebrated sacraments, and engaged in various religious rituals that were often entirely foreign to their indigenous neighbors. These ceremonies could be an enchanting spectacle or, for the locals, a curious mix of bewilderment and skepticism. Even as they established these spiritual havens, missionaries faced numerous challenges throughout their work. They dealt with isolation, the threat of disease, and the harsh realities of frontier life. Picture the stifling heat of summer days, or the biting cold of winter nights, challenges that would be far too familiar to anyone who has ever camped under the stars. Historians still argue whether the missionaries' resilience was due to their faith alone or if some pragmatism played a role in their survival. At the same time, the often overlooked role of women in these missions deserves recognition. Whether they were wives of missionaries or nuns devoted to their spiritual calling, women contributed significantly to the daily life and operations of the missions. Imagine a woman tending to her garden while simultaneously teaching children about nurturing both crops and souls. Their contributions, though less documented, were essential to the mission's success and daily survival. As we reflect on the lives of these missionaries, consider the impact they had on education and literacy among indigenous populations. The introduction of written language and formal education systems altered the very fabric of local cultures. Picture a small classroom under a makeshift roof, where children, eager to learn, sit on the ground, listening intently as a missionary teaches them to read. It's a small yet transformative moment in history, akin to the excitement of children today learning to read their first book. Throughout their endeavors, the relationship between missionaries and the Spanish crown was complex. The crown had vested interests in the colonies, seeing them as both a source of wealth and a means to expand Christianity. This dynamic created a push-and-pull scenario where missionaries often found themselves navigating the expectations and pressures from both the local communities and their royal patrons. Historians still argue whether the mission system was primarily about evangelization or colonial control, leaving us to ponder the true legacy of these early efforts. As we draw together these threads of daily life, cultural exchanges, and the intricate relationships that shaped the missionary experience, it's essential to recognize that the legacy of 18th-century Spanish missionaries is woven into the very fabric of modern Latin American cultures. Their influence persists, for better or worse, reminding us of the complexities of historical narratives. While we may often remember them as harbingers of faith, the reality of their existence marked by struggle, adaptation, and cultural entanglement reveals a surprisingly simple yet profound essence of life in those missions. As you allow these images to settle, remember that this story is not merely about the past, it resonates with the ongoing dance of cultural exchange that continues today. As we drift deeper into the world of 18th-century Spanish missionaries, let's dive into the daily life that defined their existence within the missions. You might picture a landscape where the sky stretches wide above, filled with vibrant hues, alongside the sounds of laborers toiling in the fields and the faint notes of hymns wafting through the air. Imagine yourself among them, wearing a simple tunic that speaks more of function than fashion. Each day unfolds like a story, filled with tasks both sacred and mundane. Mornings would begin early, as the sun peaked above the horizon, casting a golden light over the adobe structures of the mission. You can almost hear the rustle of the straw mats as the missionaries emerge from their modest sleeping quarters. The first light brings with it the sounds of nature waking up, birds chirping, and perhaps a distant cow mooing. The air is crisp, and the aroma of freshly baked bread wafts through the mission, a testament to the hard work that goes into sustaining life in such a remote area. To start the day, prayers would be said, an essential ritual for these individuals who viewed their work as a divine calling. Imagine a group of men and women gathered in the mission chapel, their voices harmonizing in a prayer that resonates through the walls. This daily moment of reflection and divine connection would set the tone for the hours ahead, a grounding practice amidst the challenges they faced. After prayer, the missionaries would head out to begin their duties, which varied greatly depending on the day. Some might head into the fields to cultivate crops essential for the mission's survival. Corn, beans, and squash were staples in their diet. Farming was not just a means of sustenance, it was a way to connect with the land and the indigenous peoples who had been farming these grounds long before the missionaries arrived. Their agricultural practices would blend European techniques with indigenous knowledge, creating a unique agricultural fusion that would become a hallmark of the mission system. As you picture them toiling under the sun, you can almost feel the heat on your skin and the sweat trickling down your brow. It's not just hard work, it's a labor of love, a commitment to building a community. They often engaged with local laborers, learning from their farming traditions while also imparting their own knowledge. There was an undeniable exchange occurring, a melding of cultures where both parties benefited, much like the partnerships we see today in community gardens or cooperative farming. Throughout the day, missionaries also took on the role of educators. Imagine a classroom under a thatched roof, where children from indigenous communities gather around, eager to learn. The missionaries taught not only religious education, but also reading, writing, and arithmetic. They understood that literacy was a powerful tool, one that could empower the local populations to navigate their world more effectively. It's a stark reminder of how education can change lives, akin to the way children today eagerly absorb knowledge in classrooms across the globe. Historians still argue whether the educational efforts of missionaries were genuinely altruistic or if they served a strategic purpose to cement European control. As you ponder this, consider how education can be both a gift and a tool of influence. The classrooms were filled with hopeful laughter and the occasional teasing, a reminder that children, regardless of their cultural background, share a common joy in learning despite the differing contexts. After a long day of work, as dusk settles in, the missionaries would gather once again for evening prayer. Picture the soft glow of candlelight illuminating their faces as they come together to reflect on their day, offering thanks and seeking guidance for the challenges ahead. This communal activity reinforced their bonds, creating a sense of family among individuals who were far from their original homes. The evenings also allowed for storytelling. Gathered around flickering fires or within the mission's walls, they'd share tales of their experiences, perhaps recalling humorous mishaps or poignant moments of connection with the local people. Such stories served to foster community spirit and shared understanding, much like we gather today to share our lives with friends over a cozy dinner. As night envelops the missions, the rhythmic sounds of nature wrap around them, the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. There is a peacefulness that descends, a reminder of the simple life these missionaries led. The vastness of the sky, filled with stars, mirrors the infinite possibilities and challenges that lay ahead of them. Yet, even amidst this simplicity, they faced numerous hardships. Illness was a constant companion, and many missionaries succumbed to diseases brought on by the harsh living conditions or unfamiliar environments. Imagine the isolation they felt during times of sickness, cut off from the familiar comforts of home. It's a stark contrast to today's world, where a quick call or text can bridge the gap between loved ones. The annual cycle of life in the mission was marked by ebbs and flows, times of harvest and times of drought, moments of laughter and periods of mourning. The missionaries' resilience became a hallmark of their existence, a testament to their commitment to their calling and the communities they served. As we reflect on the daily life of these missionaries, it becomes apparent that their experiences were far more complex than the simplistic narratives often portrayed. They navigated the delicate balance between faith and cultural exchange, labor and education, hardship and community. This tapestry of existence, filled with vibrant colors of life and muted tones of struggle, invites us to consider our own lives' daily routines, the quiet sacrifices and the connections we forge with those around us. It's a legacy steeped in simplicity yet rich with depth, revealing that even the most mundane daily activities can hold profound meaning in the grand narrative of history. As we continue our exploration of 18th century Spanish missionaries, let's delve into the fascinating cultural exchanges that unfolded between these earnest individuals and the indigenous communities they encountered. Imagine walking through a vibrant mission settlement where the air is thick with the scent of spices and the sounds of lively conversations in various languages. The interactions within this melting pot of cultures would shape not only their lives but also the very fabric of the communities they sought to influence. From the outset, the missionaries faced the monumental task of bridging a vast cultural divide. Picture yourself standing at the center of a mission, surrounded by groups of indigenous people engaged in traditional practices that were rich with meaning and history. In their efforts to convert local populations to Christianity, missionaries often found themselves not just as teachers of faith, but as learners of indigenous customs and languages. It was a delicate dance, one that required patience and humility. One of the most remarkable aspects of these cultural exchanges was the missionaries' efforts to learn native languages. Imagine the sight of a missionary scribbling notes in a dusty notebook, struggling to master the nuances of a language that rolled off the tongues of local speakers with ease. This dedication to understanding the language was not merely a practical step, it symbolized respect and a desire to connect on a deeper level. It's a concept that resonates today as we strive to understand one another across cultural barriers in our increasingly globalized world. Historians still argue about the extent to which these language lessons were mutually beneficial. On one hand, missionaries could effectively communicate their religious teachings. On the other, they often introduced new concepts and ideas that were foreign to the indigenous peoples. Imagine a missionary teaching the concept of salvation to a population that had its own spiritual beliefs, and exchange that could lead to enlightenment but also confusion. Cultural exchanges were not limited to language alone. One can picture missionaries observing local customs, perhaps witnessing a colorful festival filled with music, dancing, and traditional rituals. The missionaries were often struck by the beauty and complexity of these practices, which were deeply interwoven with the local identities. Instead of outright rejection, there were instances where missionaries adapted certain elements of indigenous culture into their own practices, creating a hybrid form of spirituality. For example, the use of local music and instruments during religious ceremonies became a point of cultural blending. Picture a chapel filled with the sounds of native drums accompanying hymns sung in both Spanish and indigenous languages. It's a stunning reminder that even within the realm of spirituality, cultural influences can intertwine, creating something new and vibrant. The missionaries also brought with them European customs, which occasionally clashed with indigenous practices. Imagine the confusion that might arise when a missionary insists on a certain way of conducting a religious ceremony, which starkly contrasts with local traditions. This cultural friction often led to fascinating negotiations, where both sides would have to find common ground. One intriguing aspect of these negotiations was the role of trade. The missionaries established relationships with local artisans and traders, facilitating an exchange of goods that would benefit both parties. Picture a bustling market, where handmade pottery, woven textiles, and agricultural produce are exchanged for European tools and textiles. This commercial interaction opened doors for dialogue and relationship building, allowing missionaries to further integrate into the community. However, not all cultural encounters were harmonious. There were instances of misunderstanding and resistance from indigenous populations, who were wary of the missionaries' intentions. Imagine a gathering of local leaders, expressing their concerns over the missionaries' presence and the changes they brought. Historians still argue about the complex dynamics of these interactions, with some viewing missionaries as facilitators of cultural exchange while others see them as agents of colonialism, undermining indigenous traditions. The resistance from native populations often manifested in various forms. Some indigenous groups outright rejected the missionaries' teachings, while others engaged in subtle forms of resistance, blending their traditional beliefs with the new ideas introduced by the missionaries. Picture a local family who, while attending Mass on Sundays, also maintains their own spiritual practices during the rest of the week. This blending of traditions speaks volumes about the resilience of indigenous cultures in the face of foreign influence. Despite these challenges, many missionaries remained committed to their mission, believing in the transformative power of their teachings. They viewed their work as a divine calling, motivated by a sense of duty to share their faith and improve the conditions of the indigenous peoples. Imagine the conviction with which a missionary delivers a sermon, passionately sharing tales of faith, hope, and salvation, as a crowd listens, some captivated, others skeptical. As we contemplate this intricate web of cultural exchanges, it becomes clear that the legacy of the missionaries extends far beyond mere religious conversion. Their interactions with indigenous communities paved the way for a complex interplay of ideas, beliefs, and practices. This cultural fusion is a reminder that history is rarely black and white. It is often a palette of vibrant colors blending together in unexpected ways. The influence of these exchanges can still be felt today in modern Latin American cultures, where the echoes of indigenous traditions coexist with elements of European heritage. Just as the missionaries learned from the local populations, we too can draw lessons from their experiences. The art of listening, understanding, and adapting to different cultural contexts is as relevant now as it was 3 centuries ago. In the end, the life of a missionary in the 18th century was not merely about spreading a faith, it was about engaging in a dialogue that would forever alter the landscape of human interaction. As you reflect on these cultural exchanges, consider the importance of fostering connections across cultures, embracing the richness that diversity brings to our shared human experience. As we navigate the intricate world of 18th century Spanish missionaries, it's time to turn our attention to the spiritual practices that defined their lives and shaped the communities around them. Imagine stepping into a sunlit chapel, the warm glow illuminating the faces of gathered devotees, each bearing the weight of their faith and the promise of new beginnings. The rituals performed in these sacred spaces were not mere formalities, they were the heartbeat of the missions, interweaving the spiritual with the everyday in profound ways. The foundation of missionary life was deeply rooted in their religious convictions. Every morning began with prayers, a ritual that served as both an individual and communal act of devotion. Picture the missionaries gathered in a circle, heads bowed, their voices rising in harmonious supplication. This was more than a routine, it was a moment of collective reflection, grounding them in their purpose and reminding them of the spiritual stakes of their mission. A daily commitment to prayer offered them strength to face the challenges of frontier life, a source of hope amidst uncertainty. During these prayer sessions, missionaries would often incorporate local customs and languages to make their spiritual practices more accessible to the indigenous peoples. This adaptability highlights an intriguing aspect of their work. While they were determined to instill Christianity, they also recognized the importance of making their teachings resonate within the cultural context of the communities they served. Imagine a missionary leading prayers in a local dialect, the words flowing more naturally than their attempts at Spanish. It's a poignant reminder of how faith can transcend language barriers, creating pathways for understanding. The sacred rituals of the missions also included the sacraments, which played a pivotal role in the spiritual lives of both missionaries and indigenous converts. Baptisms, confirmations, and weddings were significant events that brought communities together. Envision a baptismal ceremony held near a river, where a missionary gently immerses an infant and the air fills with the sounds of joyous celebration. These moments were not just religious milestones, they served to strengthen community ties, uniting individuals through shared beliefs and experiences. Yet, these sacraments often sparked tension between missionary practices and native traditions. Imagine an indigenous family proud of their spiritual customs, now being asked to abandon them in favor of new rituals that felt foreign. Historians still argue about the impact of these cultural impositions, with some suggesting that such practices undermined existing spiritual systems, while others believe they created a rich tapestry of blended beliefs. One fascinating aspect of the missionaries' spiritual practices was the incorporation of indigenous symbols and elements into their religious ceremonies. Despite their aim to convert, missionaries sometimes adopted local symbols that resonated with the people. Picture a Catholic altar adorned with native flowers, a beautiful fusion of two worlds. It's a testament to how faith can evolve and adapt in unexpected ways, creating a new spiritual identity that honors both the old and the new. As the sun sets each evening, the missionaries would gather once again for evening prayers, the chapel lit by flickering candles. These moments offered a chance to reflect on the day's trials and triumphs. Imagine the soft sounds of whispered prayers, mingled with the gentle rustling of clothing as they settled into their roles as spiritual guides. This nightly ritual served as a sanctuary, a space for contemplation and connection with the divine. The missionaries often faced considerable challenges in maintaining their spiritual practices amid the realities of frontier life. Illness, isolation, and the harshness of the environment could weigh heavily on their spirits. Picture a missionary recovering from a fever, grappling with doubt, and longing for solace. Yet, it was during these difficult times that the communal aspect of spirituality became vital. The support of their fellow missionaries and the community provided comfort and strength, allowing them to persevere. In addition to formal rituals, the missionaries engaged in various informal spiritual practices, such as prayer walks or meditation in nature. Imagine a missionary wandering through lush fields, taking a moment to pause and listen to the rustling leaves or the distant sounds of water flowing. These simple acts of reverence allowed them to appreciate the beauty of creation, reinforcing their connection to God and the mission's purpose. As we reflect on the spiritual practices of these missionaries, it's essential to recognize the broader implications of their work. The blending of indigenous beliefs with Catholicism led to unique expressions of spirituality that continue to influence contemporary Latin American cultures. Modern practices, such as the Day of the Dead and various folk religious customs, often showcase this rich spiritual legacy, revealing how the past continues to shape present identities. This vibrant tapestry of spirituality reminds us that faith is a living, breathing entity, ever-evolving and adaptable. Just as the missionaries sought to make their teachings relevant to the people they served, we too can learn to embrace and celebrate the diverse expressions of spirituality that exist in our world today. As you let these reflections settle, consider the power of rituals in your own life, how they ground you, connect you to others, and offer solace in challenging times. The simple act of coming together in shared belief, whether in formal or informal settings, creates bonds that transcend time and culture, uniting us in our search for meaning. In the end, the spiritual practices of 18th century Spanish missionaries were not just about conversion, they were about connection to the divine, to one another, and to the very essence of life itself. As we wander further into the realm of the 18th century Spanish missionaries, let's shift our focus to the architecture that defined their missions. Picture the landscape dotted with stately buildings rising against the backdrop of sprawling landscapes, each mission a testament to the aspirations and challenges of those who built them. The architecture of these missions was not merely functional, it reflected the confluence of cultures, spirituality, and the rugged beauty of the natural surroundings. When you first approach a mission, you're likely struck by the simplicity yet grandeur of its design. Many missions were constructed using local materials, such as adobe and stone, skillfully melded together to withstand the test of time. Imagine the sight of sturdy walls, their earthen tones blending harmoniously with the surrounding environment. The use of adobe, in particular an ancient building material made from clay and straw, was both practical and symbolic, embodying the very essence of the land itself. The layout of these missions often followed a similar pattern. At the center, you would find the chapel, flanked by various communal spaces, including living quarters, kitchens, and workshops. Picture a courtyard bustling with activity, where missionaries and local populations come together to share meals, stories, and traditions. This communal space provided not only a physical gathering point, but also served as a reminder of the interconnectedness of life within the mission. In addition to the chapel, which was often adorned with simple yet evocative altarpieces, many missions featured striking bell towers. Imagine the sight of a bell tower rising high into the sky, its bells calling community members to worship or signaling the passing of time. The sound of the bells resonated across the landscape, blending with the natural sounds of the environment, a melodic reminder of the blend between the spiritual and the earthly. The design of these missions also often incorporated elements of indigenous architecture, showcasing a synthesis of cultural influences. For instance, the use of open-air plazas mirrored indigenous communal spaces, promoting gatherings and fostering relationships. Historians still debate the significance of these architectural fusions, with some arguing that they symbolize an effort to respect local customs, while others see them as a method to assert colonial dominance. As you explore the interiors of these missions, you'll find that craftsmanship played a crucial role in their identity. Many missionaries were skilled artisans, using their talents to create beautiful decorative elements that adorned the walls and ceilings. Picture intricate wood carvings, colorful murals, and even hand-painted tiles, each telling a story of faith and dedication. These artistic expressions were not merely embellishments, they served as tools for education, teaching biblical stories and moral lessons to congregants. The challenges faced by the missionaries during the construction of these missions were immense. Imagine the labor involved in transporting materials from far and wide, often under harsh conditions. The collaboration with local laborers showcased the relationships between the missionaries and indigenous peoples as they worked side by side to build these sacred spaces. This partnership often led to a blending of techniques where indigenous builders used their knowledge of local materials and construction methods alongside European styles. However, the construction of these missions was not without conflict. The imposition of European architectural styles on local landscapes often clashed with indigenous sensibilities. Picture a local elder observing the construction of a mission and feeling a sense of loss for the sacred sites of their ancestors. This tension serves as a reminder that even the most beautiful structures can carry complex histories, embodying both hope and contention. As we examine the architectural legacy of the missions, it's essential to recognize that many of these structures still stand today, serving as reminders of a rich historical tapestry. They have become cultural landmarks, attracting visitors who wish to learn more about the intertwined histories of Spanish colonization and indigenous cultures. Their enduring presence showcases the resilience of both this architecture and the communities that built and inhabited them. In modern times, some of these missions have been restored, serving not only as historic sites but also as active centers for community engagement and spirituality. Imagine walking through the corridors of a restored mission, where the echoes of the past mingle with contemporary voices and where traditions continue to evolve. The missions now serve as places of reflection, reminding us of the complexities of our shared history and the importance of honoring cultural heritage. As you contemplate the architectural legacy of these missions, consider how the spaces we create today also reflect our values, beliefs, and aspirations. Just as the missionaries sought to create structures that would stand the test of time, we too have the opportunity to build spaces that foster connection, understanding, and community in our own lives. The architecture of 18th-century Spanish missions is more than just a collection of buildings. It is an embodiment of cultural exchange, resilience, and the quest for connection. As we move forward in our exploration of these missionaries' lives, let's carry with us the imagery of these enduring structure symbols of faith, cultural synthesis, and the journey of those who came before us. As we delve deeper into the lives of 18th-century Spanish missionaries, it's essential to acknowledge the myriad challenges and hardships they faced throughout their endeavors. Picture yourself in the dusty terrain of the missions, where the relentless sun casts long shadows and the air is thick with the weight of expectation and uncertainty. The work was often grueling, and the obstacles they encountered were as daunting as the wilderness that surrounded them. From the outset, isolation marked the experience of many missionaries. Imagine being far from home, cut off from familiar comforts and the support of your loved ones. The vast landscapes of the Americas were breathtaking yet unforgiving, and the remoteness of the missions often led to a profound sense of solitude. This isolation could weigh heavily on the spirit, making the already arduous task of converting indigenous peoples even more challenging. Disease was another formidable adversary. Picture the missionaries grappling with illnesses that swept through the missions like wildfire malaria, smallpox, and other ailments that struck with little warning. The lack of medical knowledge and resources in these remote areas meant that many missionaries succumbed to illnesses, often without the comfort of family or friends by their side. Imagine the heartache of a missionary falling ill, longing for the familiar touch of loved ones, while grappling with the reality of their mortality far from home. The environment itself presented a host of challenges. The missionaries had to adapt to unfamiliar climates, from scorching summers to harsh winters. You might envision them struggling against the elements, whether it be battling through torrential rains that turned paths into muddy quagmires or shivering through cold nights in poorly insulated structures. The whims of nature could be both beautiful and brutal, emphasizing the missionaries' resilience and adaptability in the face of adversity. Communal tensions also added to the difficulties they faced. Picture a mission where misunderstandings between missionaries and local communities arise, fueled by cultural differences and miscommunication. The missionaries arrived with a different worldview, often perceiving their own beliefs as superior. This belief sometimes led to friction, as indigenous peoples resisted efforts to convert or abandon their traditions. Historians still argue about the extent to which these tensions were rooted in genuine cultural clashes versus misunderstandings, leaving us to ponder the complexities of their interactions. Moreover, the missionaries frequently struggled with the very tenets of their calling. Imagine the internal conflict of a missionary, who witnesses the beauty and depth of indigenous spiritual practices, yet feels compelled to promote their own faith. This duality presents a poignant tension that must have been difficult to navigate. It raises profound questions about the nature of belief and the ethics of conversion in a world filled with diverse spiritual expressions. Despite these significant challenges, many missionaries persevered, driven by a profound sense of duty and faith. Imagine their determination, fueled by an unwavering belief that their work had the potential to change lives. This resolve often manifested itself in acts of kindness and service as missionaries sought to build relationships with local communities, offering assistance in times of need, whether by providing education, food, or medical care. The missionary commitment to education was evident in their efforts to establish schools within the missions. Picture a small classroom, filled with eager children absorbing new knowledge, despite the challenges surrounding them. The desire to empower indigenous peoples through education served to bridge cultural gaps, fostering a sense of community and connection. Yet even in these educational efforts, missionaries faced skepticism and resistance. Many indigenous individuals were wary of the intentions behind education, reflecting a deep-rooted desire to protect their cultural identity. The realities of frontier life also meant that resources were often limited. Picture missionaries carefully rationing supplies, food, materials for construction, and educational resources while striving to meet the needs of their communities. This scarcity often necessitated ingenuity and resourcefulness, as they had to make the most of what little they had. The creative solutions they devised in the face of adversity underscore their ability to adapt and innovate, qualities that are often essential in challenging environments. As we reflect on the hardships faced by these missionaries, it's crucial to remember that their struggles were not merely obstacles, they were also opportunities for growth, learning, and connection. Each challenge encountered became a lesson in resilience, a testament to the indomitable spirit that characterized their lives. The perseverance displayed by these missionaries offers us insights into our own challenges, inviting us to consider how we respond to adversity in our own lives. In this rich tapestry of hardship and resilience, we see not only the trials of the missionaries, but also the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Their experiences remind us that even in the most difficult circumstances, there are opportunities for connection, understanding, and growth. As we continue our exploration of the lives of these missionaries, let us carry with us the lessons learned from their struggles, finding inspiration in their unwavering commitment to their calling and the communities they served. As we journey further into the world of 18th-century Spanish missionaries, it's time to shine a light on the often overlooked contributions of women within the missionary landscape. Picture the mission settlements, a backdrop of adobe structures, bustling with activity and alive with the sounds of daily life. However, amid this vibrant scene, the crucial roles played by women often remain in the shadows, despite their profound impact on the missions and the communities they served. Women in the missions were not merely passive observers, they were active participants who contributed in multifaceted ways. Imagine a scene where a missionary wife tends to a garden, growing vegetables and herbs that would supplement the meager diets of the missionaries and local indigenous families. These gardens were essential for survival, and the women's efforts helped create a sense of sustainability within the missions. Their nurturing hands not only cultivated plants but also fostered community spirit. In addition to agricultural tasks, women often took on roles as educators. Picture a group of young girls sitting in a modest classroom, where a missionary wife teaches them not only the basics of reading and writing but also values of faith and community. These women were instrumental in creating educational opportunities for both girls and boys, helping to lay the groundwork for future generations. The act of teaching children in these remote settings was a significant contribution to the broader mission of spreading literacy and knowledge. The spiritual support provided by women in the missions was equally vital. Imagine a missionary wife leading prayer circles, gathering local women to share their fears, hopes, and aspirations. These gatherings would foster bonds among the women, creating a network of support and resilience. In a world where isolation was common, these spiritual connections could provide solace and strength. Women were not just supporting their husbands' missions, they were integral to the spiritual life of the community. Women also played essential roles in healthcare within the missions. Picture a missionary wife tending to the sick, using her knowledge of herbal remedies passed down through generations or learned through interaction with local healers. The blending of European and indigenous medical practices became a crucial aspect of healthcare in the missions. This cross-cultural exchange not only helped alleviate suffering but also fostered mutual respect and understanding between the missionaries and the indigenous populations. Historians still debate the implications of these interactions, considering whether they represented genuine care or a means of asserting control. Despite their considerable contributions, women in the missions faced numerous challenges. Their roles were often framed within the context of domesticity, and their voices were frequently overshadowed by their male counterparts. Think about the frustration of a woman who, despite her integral role in the mission, found her contributions unrecognized in the annals of history. This lack of acknowledgement serves as a reminder of the broader societal norms of the time, which often relegated women to subordinate positions. However, some women defied these constraints and emerged as leaders within their communities. Picture a determined woman advocating for the rights of her people, leveraging her position to influence decisions made by the missionaries. Their courage and tenacity often helped bridge the gap between indigenous populations and the missionaries, creating a more cooperative environment. The legacy of these women extends beyond their immediate contributions. As we explore the narratives of 18th century Spanish missionaries, we must also acknowledge the broader implications of their work. The blending of cultures, knowledge, and values that occurred within the missions laid the groundwork for the complex identities that characterize modern Latin American cultures today. The stories of these women remind us of the importance of recognizing voices from the margins, celebrating their contributions and resilience in shaping history. Just as they played a crucial role in their communities, we too can honor the diverse narratives that make up our present, acknowledging that history is often written by those who are overlooked. As we reflect on the contributions of women in the missions, consider how their experiences resonate with contemporary discussions about gender roles and representation. The struggles and triumphs of these women serve as a powerful reminder that everyone has a role to play in shaping their communities and that their contributions, no matter how small they may seem, have lasting impacts. In the end, the lives of women in 18th century Spanish missions invite us to reconsider our understanding of history, emphasizing the necessity of inclusivity in the narratives we tell. Their stories of resilience, creativity, and compassion are woven into the larger tapestry of missionary life, revealing the intricate ways in which all members of a community contribute to its growth and evolution. As we continue our exploration of the 18th century Spanish missionaries, let's turn our attention to the role of education and literacy within the missions. Imagine wandering through one of these settlements, where the air buzzes with the sounds of children laughing and learning. The missionaries recognized early on the transformative power of education not only as a means to impart religious teachings, but also as a tool for empowering local communities. In a world where knowledge could open doors and create opportunities, education became a cornerstone of their mission. Picture a simple classroom setting, perhaps a room with wooden beams and dusty floors, where children gather eagerly, their eyes wide with curiosity. Missionaries made it a priority to establish schools as part of their efforts to promote literacy among indigenous populations. They understood that education was not just about reading and writing, it was about fostering critical thinking skills and encouraging a sense of agency among the students. Imagine the excitement of a child learning to write their name for the first time, a small yet significant step toward self-expression. The curriculum often reflected a blend of European and indigenous knowledge. Alongside lessons in Catholic doctrine, students learned math, geography, and the arts. Imagine the sight of children sketching landscapes or practicing arithmetic, their pencils scratching against rough paper as they absorbed new concepts. The incorporation of local languages into the lessons made the material more relatable, allowing indigenous students to engage with the content meaningfully. This approach was not merely practical, it was a recognition of the value of indigenous cultures and languages. However, the introduction of formal education was not without its challenges. Many indigenous families were initially skeptical of the intentions behind education, fearing that it would lead to the erosion of their cultural practices. Picture a village elder voicing concerns about the missionaries' influence, emphasizing the importance of preserving traditional knowledge. Missionaries often found themselves in a delicate position navigating the fine line between promoting literacy and respecting the cultures they encountered. Historians still debate the impact of educational initiatives, weighing the benefits of literacy against the potential loss of indigenous heritage. Despite these tensions, many indigenous communities gradually embraced education, recognizing its potential to improve their circumstances. Imagine parents sending their children to school, hopeful for a brighter future. The missionaries, aware of the transformative power of knowledge, worked diligently to build trust with local families, engaging them in discussions about the benefits of education. This collaborative approach helped to foster a sense of community ownership over the educational process, making it more than just a top-down imposition. In addition to formal education, the missionaries played a crucial role in promoting vocational training. Picture young men and women learning essential skills such as farming, carpentry, and weaving. These practical lessons not only equipped students with valuable trades, but also empowered them to become self-sufficient. By teaching these skills, missionaries aimed to create a legacy of economic independence and resilience among the communities they served. The impact of these educational efforts extended far beyond the immediate context of the missions. As literacy spread, it allowed local populations to engage with broader social and political contexts. Imagine individuals participating in discussions about governance, land rights, and cultural preservation, conversations that were previously inaccessible due to a lack of literacy. Education became a gateway for indigenous voices to be heard, sparking a sense of agency and empowerment that would carry through generations. As we reflect on the significance of education within the missions, it is essential to acknowledge its long-term legacy. The seeds of literacy planted by the missionaries contributed to the emergence of a more educated populace, shaping the cultural landscape of modern Latin America. Today, we see the echoes of those efforts in the value placed on education in many communities, where literacy is regarded as a fundamental right and a pathway to progress. Moreover, the blending of European and indigenous knowledge laid the groundwork for a rich intellectual tradition. The cautious integration of diverse perspectives continues to influence contemporary educational practices, reminding us of the importance of inclusivity and cultural relevance in learning environments. As you consider the role of education in the lives of these missionaries and the communities they served, think about the power of knowledge in your own life. Education is not merely a means to an end, it is a journey that shapes our identities, informs our beliefs, and connects us to one another. The lessons learned from the missionaries' efforts underscore the importance of fostering curiosity, critical thinking, and respect for diverse cultures in our educational pursuits. In the end, the commitment to education and literacy among 18th-century Spanish missionaries reveals a profound understanding of the transformative potential of knowledge. Their efforts to empower local communities through education forged connections that would resonate well beyond their immediate context, leaving an indelible mark on the cultural landscape of Latin America. It is a reminder that education is a powerful tool, capable of bridging divides and nurturing a sense of shared humanity across cultures and generations. As we continue our journey through the lives of 18th-century Spanish missionaries, it's vital to explore the influence of the Spanish crown on their work and the broader mission system. Picture the sprawling territories of the New World, where the missions served as outposts of colonial power, each reflecting the ambitions of the Spanish Empire. The relationship between the missionaries and the crown was complex, marked by both support and tension, as the missionaries walked the fine line between faith and imperial interests. At the heart of this relationship lay the crown's desire to expand Christian influence throughout the Americas. For the Spanish monarchy, converting indigenous populations was not only a moral imperative but also a means of asserting control over vast and often unruly territories. Imagine the grandeur of the Spanish court, where officials discussed strategies for colonization, believing that spreading Christianity was synonymous with civilizing the indigenous peoples. In this context, missionaries were seen as essential agents of the crown's agenda, tasked with both evangelization and the maintenance of order. The missionaries themselves often viewed their work through a dual lens of religious duty and imperial service. Picture a missionary arriving in a new territory, filled with fervor and conviction, yet also aware of the expectations placed upon him by the crown. Their role was to establish missions, convert souls, and, ideally, promote the socio-economic development of the region. However, this dual obligation created a tension within their daily lives as they balanced spiritual aspirations with the practical demands of colonial governance. Despite the crown's support, missionaries frequently found themselves at odds with colonial authorities. Imagine a missionary challenging a Spanish official over land disputes or the treatment of indigenous peoples. These conflicts often stemmed from differing priorities. While missionaries sought to protect the rights and dignity of indigenous populations, colonial officials were often more focused on economic exploitation and resource extraction. This friction highlights the complexities of their relationship as missionaries navigated the difficult terrain between the crown's imperial ambitions and their own moral convictions. Historians still argue about the extent of the missionaries' impact on indigenous rights and sovereignty. Some contend that the missionaries acted as advocates for the local populations, using their position to defend against colonial abuses. Others suggest that their efforts often inadvertently supported the colonial system, facilitating the crown's control over indigenous peoples. This debate invites us to reflect on the complexities of power dynamics and the multifaceted roles individuals play within larger systems. The missionaries' interactions with the crown also extended to economic considerations. The establishment of missions often included the development of agricultural projects, which were intended to make the mission self-sustaining. Picture missionaries working alongside indigenous laborers, cultivating crops that would not only feed the community but also generate income for the crown. These agricultural endeavors were seen as a way to promote productivity and foster economic ties to Spain, further cementing colonial control. However, the economic aspirations of the missionaries often conflicted with the needs and desires of indigenous peoples. Imagine the frustration of a local leader who sees their land being cultivated for the benefit of a foreign power, while their community struggles to maintain its cultural identity and autonomy. This tension underscores the conflicting interests at play, as the missionaries sought to establish a thriving mission while navigating the complex realities of colonialism. Furthermore, the Crown imposed regulations and expectations on the missionaries, dictating how they should conduct their work. Picture a missionary receiving orders from colonial authorities, outlining the goals and objectives they were expected to achieve. This top-down approach often stifled the missionaries' ability to respond effectively to the unique needs of the communities they served. They were caught in a web of bureaucracy that complicated their efforts to foster genuine relationships with indigenous populations. As we reflect on the influence of the Spanish crown on the missionaries' work, we see a microcosm of the broader dynamics of colonialism. The relationship between the missionaries and the crown illustrates the intricate interplay of faith, power, and cultural exchange. While the missionaries sought to promote spiritual growth and education, they were also enmeshed in a system that prioritized imperial interests and economic gain. In considering the implications of this relationship, we are reminded of the complexities that arise in any colonial context. The legacies of these interactions continue to shape contemporary discussions around colonialism, cultural preservation, and the rights of indigenous peoples. The stories of the missionaries serve as a lens through which we can examine the multifaceted nature of history, recognizing that it is rarely simplistic or one-dimensional. As we move forward in our exploration of the lives of these missionaries, let's carry with us the lessons learned from their interactions with the Spanish crown. Their experiences remind us of the importance of critically examining the relationships between power, faith, and cultural exchange and how these dynamics continue to resonate in our world today. The missionaries' roles as both agents of the crown and advocates for indigenous peoples reveal the complexities of human relationships, inviting us to reflect on our own connections to history and the responsibilities we hold in shaping the future. As we delve deeper into the life of 18th-century Spanish missionaries, let's examine the economic aspects of their work and the systems they established within the missions. Picture the arid landscape transforming into thriving agricultural fields, where missionaries cultivated crops that would become the lifeblood of their communities. The mission system was not only about the spiritual salvation of souls, it also involved the creation of sustainable living conditions that could support both missionaries and indigenous populations. From the outset, agriculture played a pivotal role in the mission economy. Imagine the sight of missionaries working alongside local laborers, planting seeds in neat rows under the hot sun. They introduced European farming techniques, which were often blended with indigenous methods to create a more effective agricultural system. Crops such as wheat, corn, and beans flourished, ensuring that the missions could sustain themselves while also providing food for local communities. Historians still argue about the significance of these agricultural practices. Are they a benevolent attempt to improve local diets, or were they part of a broader strategy to control the indigenous populations? In many ways, the economic model of the missions echoed the feudal systems of Europe, with a hierarchical structure that placed missionaries at the top. Picture a day in the life of a missionary who oversees the labor of indigenous workers, who are often compensated with food and shelter rather than monetary wages. This arrangement allowed the missionaries to maintain control over the workforce, while also providing a semblance of stability for local communities. However, it also raises questions about the fairness of such a system and whether it effectively empowered indigenous peoples or reinforced existing inequalities. In addition to agriculture, trade became a crucial aspect of the mission economy. Missionaries established trade networks with nearby settlements, exchanging surplus goods for tools, textiles, and other resources. Picture a bustling market scene, where missionaries barter with local merchants, fostering relationships that would benefit both parties. This economic interplay not only created a sense of community, but also helped the missionaries integrate more fully into the local economy. The ability to trade goods created a level of interdependence that was beneficial for both the missionaries and the indigenous peoples. However, the economic relationships established by the missionaries were not without conflict. Imagine an indigenous leader expressing frustration over the missionaries' control of local resources and the disruption of traditional trade practices. The introduction of new economic models often clashed with established indigenous customs, creating tension and resistance. The missionaries' well-intentioned efforts to improve agricultural practices sometimes led to unintended consequences, such as the overexploitation of land and resources. Historians continue to debate whether these missionaries' economic interventions ultimately benefited or harmed local economies and traditional ways of life. Additionally, the missions often served as centers of craftsmanship and artisanal production. As missionaries worked to establish economic self-sufficiency, they encouraged local craftsmen to produce goods for trade. Picture skilled artisans creating beautiful pottery, textiles and tools, blending indigenous artistry with European techniques. This cultural exchange not only enriched the local economy, but also fostered a sense of pride and identity among the artisans. The resulting products became symbols of a unique mission culture, showcasing the blending of different traditions and the resilience of local communities. Yet, these economic activities were often overshadowed by the larger colonial context. The missions were part of a broader strategy to extract resources from the New World, and the economic systems established within them were intricately tied to the Spanish crown's imperial ambitions. Imagine a missionary grappling with this reality, torn between their desire to serve the local population and the obligations imposed by colonial authorities. This tension underscores the complexities of their work and the multifaceted nature of their legacies. As we reflect on the economic aspects of the missionaries' lives, it's essential to recognize the lasting impact of their efforts. The agricultural systems established in the missions laid the foundation for future agricultural practices in the region, shaping the economic landscape of Latin America for generations to come. The blending of European and indigenous agricultural techniques resulted in unique farming practices that continue to influence the region's agricultural identity. Moreover, the trade networks established by the missionaries fostered connections that would endure long after the missions themselves faded from prominence. These networks facilitated the movement of goods, ideas, and cultural practices, paving the way for the rich tapestry of contemporary Latin American culture. In considering the economic systems established by the missionaries, we are reminded of the complexities of historical narratives. The legacies of these missionaries are not merely stories of faith and conversion, they are also tales of economic ambition, cultural exchange, and the intricate relationships formed between diverse peoples. As we continue our exploration of the lives of these missionaries, let us carry with us the awareness of the economic dimensions of their work and the enduring impact it has had on the societies they encountered. The interplay of faith and economics invites us to reflect on our own relationships with culture, commerce, and community. As we navigate our world today, let us consider how our actions contribute to the shaping of economic systems, the preservation of cultural identities, and the fostering of inclusive communities. The stories of these missionaries remind us that our legacies are shaped not only by our beliefs, but also by the tangible impacts we have on the lives of those around us. As we delve deeper into the complex tapestry of 18th-century Spanish missionary life, it's essential to explore the theme of native resistance. While many missionaries arrived with noble intentions of converting indigenous populations and uplifting their communities, it is crucial to remember that the indigenous peoples had their own rich histories, cultures, and traditions long before the missionaries set foot on their lands. Picture a vibrant village filled with families who have cultivated their customs for generations, their ancestral knowledge interwoven with a deep connection to the land they inhabit. The arrival of missionaries often disrupted the established ways of life, leading to various forms of resistance from indigenous populations. Imagine a gathering of local leaders, discussing the implications of the missionaries' presence in their community. Some might express concern over the loss of their cultural heritage and the encroachment on their spiritual practices. The clash between missionary zeal and indigenous autonomy created a charged atmosphere, where cultural identity was fiercely defended. One of the most visible forms of resistance was the outright rejection of missionary teachings. Imagine a local chief standing before a group of missionaries, asserting the importance of maintaining traditional beliefs and practices. Indigenous peoples often viewed the missionaries' attempts to convert them as a direct challenge to their identity. This resistance was not merely an act of defiance, it was a powerful assertion of agency, a determination to preserve their culture amid external pressures. Historians still debate the nuances of this resistance, with some arguing that it was deeply rooted in the desire to protect spiritual and cultural heritage, while others see it as a response to the broader colonial context. The reality is that the dynamics of resistance were complex and multifaceted. Many indigenous individuals were not opposed to all aspects of missionary efforts, instead negotiating which elements to adopt while resisting others. Imagine a local family attending a missionary service, while also practicing their own rituals at home, illustrating a blend of cultures that often characterized these interactions. In many cases, resistance was expressed through subtle actions rather than overt rebellion. Picture a community quietly maintaining their traditional agricultural practices, opting not to fully engage in the European methods encouraged by the missionaries. This quiet defiance allowed indigenous peoples to maintain their cultural identity while navigating the realities of colonial rule. Such actions often went unnoticed by the missionaries, who may have perceived their efforts as fully accepted, unaware of the underlying complexities. Furthermore, resistance manifested in the form of alliances among indigenous groups. Imagine tribes coming together, united by a shared desire to protect their lands and traditions from the encroachment of missionaries and colonial authorities. These alliances served as formidable barriers against the missionaries' attempts to exert control, emphasizing the power of collective action. While the missionaries sought to establish dominance through conversion, they often encountered resilient communities united in their determination to safeguard their cultural heritage. In some instances, outright conflicts erupted, leading to violent confrontations between missionaries and indigenous groups. Picture a scene where tensions reach a boiling point, resulting in a clash between local warriors defending their land and missionaries advocating for their spiritual mission. Such conflicts serve as stark reminders of the complexities of colonial encounters, revealing that the path of cultural exchange is often fraught with contention. However, the story of resistance also includes moments of collaboration and coexistence. Many indigenous peoples engaged with missionaries in ways that allowed them to retain elements of their cultural identity. Picture a missionary who learns to appreciate local customs and incorporates them into religious practices, creating a hybrid form of spirituality. This blending of traditions reflects the dynamic interplay between cultures, highlighting the resilience and adaptability of indigenous peoples in the face of external pressures. As we reflect on the theme of native resistance, it is essential to recognize that the legacies of these interactions continue to resonate in contemporary discussions about cultural preservation and indigenous rights. The stories of resistance remind us that history is often shaped by those who actively assert their agency, challenging dominant narratives and advocating for their identities. In considering the dynamics of resistance, we are invited to reflect on our own relationships to culture, identity, and power. The struggles faced by indigenous peoples during the missionary period serve as a powerful reminder of the importance of respecting diverse perspectives and honoring the histories of those who have been marginalized. As we continue our exploration of the lives of these missionaries, let us carry with us the understanding that the narratives of resistance are integral to the broader story of cultural exchange, illustrating the complexities and resilience of human relationships across time and space. Each act of resistance, both subtle and overt, played a crucial role in shaping the identities of indigenous communities and the trajectories of the missions. In recognizing these stories, we honor the richness of human experience and the enduring quest for dignity and self-determination that continues to resonate in the world today. As we delve further into the intricate world of 18th century Spanish missionaries, it's time to assess the historical impact of their work on modern Latin American cultures. Picture a vibrant landscape filled with diverse communities, each with its unique blend of traditions, languages, and histories. The work of missionaries during this period laid foundational stones for many cultural aspects we encounter today, creating a complex legacy that continues to evolve. The missionaries' efforts to spread Christianity were not merely about religious conversion, they also facilitated significant cultural exchanges that would shape the identity of entire communities. Imagine the profound influence of Christian teachings on local customs, festivals, and spirituality. Many indigenous communities adopted elements of Christianity, intertwining them with their traditional beliefs to create hybrid forms of worship. This syncretism illustrates the resilience of cultural identities, demonstrating how traditions can adapt and evolve in response to new influences. Introduction of European languages, particularly Spanish, also played a crucial role in shaping modern identities across Latin America. Picture a bustling marketplace where vendors communicate in a blend of Spanish and local dialects, showcasing the linguistic richness that arose from missionary interactions. Spanish became not only a means of communication, but also a vehicle for cultural exchange, literature, and education. Historians continue to debate the implications of language imposition versus cultural assimilation, questioning whether the spread of Spanish facilitated greater unity or led to the erosion of indigenous languages and dialects. The educational initiatives established by missionaries had lasting effects on literacy rates and access to education in Latin America. Imagine children learning to read and write under the guidance of missionaries, gaining skills that would empower future generations. The foundations laid during this period contributed to the establishment of educational systems that evolved over time, ultimately influencing modern educational practices. The legacy of these early efforts is visible today in the emphasis placed on education and literacy in many Latin American countries, as communities continue to strive for knowledge and empowerment. Moreover, the agricultural techniques and economic systems introduced by missionaries had a profound impact on local economies. Picture the agricultural landscapes shaped by the blending of European and indigenous farming practices, where crops such as maize, beans and wheat coexist. This fusion not only transformed agricultural production but also influenced dietary habits and culinary traditions. The legacy of these early agricultural exchanges can still be observed in the diverse cuisines of Latin America, which celebrate the fusion of indigenous ingredients with European culinary influences. The impact of missionaries extended beyond agriculture and education. They also played a role in shaping social structures and governance. Imagine a mission community where social hierarchies began to emerge, influenced by the missionaries' European ideals of civilization and order. These early social structures laid the groundwork for contemporary political and social dynamics in many Latin American countries. While the legacy of these structures is complex, they have contributed to the ongoing dialogue about governance, representation, and the rights of indigenous populations. However, it is essential to recognize that the missionaries' legacy is not without its controversies. The duality of their role as both agents of faith and instruments of colonialism continues to spark debate among historians and scholars. This complexity invites us to reflect on the ethical implications of their actions and the consequences for indigenous peoples. The narratives surrounding missionaries often highlight the tensions between conversion and cultural preservation, challenging us to consider how history is remembered and retold. As we contemplate the historical impact of 18th-century Spanish missionaries, we are reminded of the interconnectedness of cultures and the dynamic nature of identity. The legacies of these missionaries are woven into the fabric of modern Latin American societies, shaping cultural practices, languages, and social structures. This intricate tapestry of influence underscores the resilience of human experience, illustrating how traditions evolve while retaining elements of their roots. In recognizing the lasting impact of missionary work, we are also invited to celebrate the contributions of indigenous communities in shaping their own narratives. The richness of Latin American culture is a testament to the ongoing dialogue between diverse identities, highlighting the importance of honoring and preserving cultural heritage. As we move forward in our exploration of the missionaries' lives, let us carry with us the understanding that history is a living entity constantly shaped by the interactions, exchanges, and legacies of those who came before us. The stories of 18th-century Spanish missionaries serve as a reminder of the complexities of cultural exchange and the enduring quest for identity and belonging in a world marked by diversity. As we approach the end of our journey through the world of 18th-century Spanish missionaries, it is essential to engage with the historiographical debates surrounding their legacies. Understanding these different perspectives invites us to critically assess the narratives we've encountered and to appreciate the complexity of historical interpretation. Picture yourself in a university classroom or a scholarly debate, where historians passionately argue about the significance of missionary work, each perspective shedding light on the multifaceted impacts of these individuals on both indigenous cultures and the colonial landscape. One of the central debates in historiography revolves around the missionaries' role as agents of colonialism versus advocates for indigenous rights. On one side, some historians argue that missionaries acted primarily as instruments of the Spanish crown, seeking to impose European values and beliefs on native populations. Imagine the arguments emphasizing how missionary zeal often facilitated the exploitation of indigenous resources and labor, providing a veneer of legitimacy to the colonial enterprise. This perspective highlights the ways in which missionaries contributed to the broader goals of empire, prioritizing conversion and control over genuine cultural understanding. Conversely, other historians contend that many missionaries exhibited a genuine concern for the well-being of indigenous peoples. Picture a missionary advocating for the rights of local communities, navigating the complexities of colonial power structures in an effort to protect their interests. These historians argue that missionaries often stood as intermediaries between indigenous populations and colonial authorities, striving to mitigate the negative consequences of colonialism. This view emphasizes the humanitarian aspects of missionary work, suggesting that many individuals genuinely wanted to uplift and educate local communities, even if their methods were rooted in a colonial framework. Furthermore, the issue of syncretism, where indigenous beliefs and practices blended with Christianity, invites debate about the authenticity of cultural expression. Some historians argue that this blending represents cultural loss, as indigenous peoples were coerced into adopting foreign beliefs. Imagine a scholarly discussion centered around the loss of traditional practices and languages in the wake of missionary influence. However, others argue that syncretism demonstrates the resilience and adaptability of indigenous cultures, highlighting how communities negotiated their identities in response to external pressures. This perspective invites us to appreciate the complexities of cultural exchange and the agency of indigenous peoples in shaping their own narratives. Another aspect of the historiographical debate relates to the traditional narratives surrounding the missionaries themselves. Picture a historian re-evaluating the portrayal of missionaries as solely heroic figures, exploring their flaws and contradictions. This critical perspective seeks to humanize missionaries, acknowledging their limitations and biases while still recognizing their contributions to cultural exchange. It encourages a more nuanced understanding of historical figures, reminding us that individuals can embody both positive and negative traits and that their legacies are shaped by the complexities of their contexts. As we consider these historiographical debates, it becomes clear that the legacy of 18th century Spanish missionaries is not a simple story of good versus evil. Rather, it is a rich tapestry woven from multiple perspectives and experiences. Understanding these complexities allows us to engage with history in a more meaningful way, recognizing the interplay of power, belief and cultural exchange that shape the lives of both missionaries and indigenous peoples. Moreover, these debates highlight the importance of inclusivity in historical narratives. The voices of indigenous peoples must be central to our understanding of the past, as they offer invaluable insights into the impacts of missionary work on their cultures. Picture an indigenous scholar sharing their perspective on the interactions with missionaries, illuminating the nuances of their experiences and the ways in which they navigated the complexities of colonial rule. This emphasis on diverse voices enriches our understanding of history and encourages us to acknowledge the multiplicity of experiences that contribute to the larger narrative. As we reflect on these historiographical discussions, we are reminded of the enduring relevance of history in shaping our contemporary understanding of cultural exchange, identity, and power dynamics. The legacies of 18th century Spanish missionaries continue to resonate in modern conversations about colonialism, cultural preservation, and the rights of indigenous peoples. By embracing the complexity of these narratives, we can foster a deeper appreciation for the diverse experiences that shape our world today. In conclusion, the historiographical debates surrounding the lives and legacies of missionaries encourage us to engage critically with history. These discussions serve as a reminder that the past is not a fixed narrative but a dynamic interplay of perspectives and interpretations. As we move forward in our exploration, let us carry with us the understanding that history is enriched by the multiplicity of voices and experiences that reflect the complexity of the human experience. As we near the conclusion of our exploration of 18th century Spanish missionaries, it's essential to address these enduring myths that have emerged around their lives and work. These myths, often propagated through popular narratives, can overshadow the complexities of their experiences and the realities of their interactions with indigenous populations. Picture a world where myths shape perceptions, creating a simplified view of history that fails to capture the intricate dynamics at play. One prevalent myth is the idea that all missionaries were unwaveringly devoted to the spiritual salvation of indigenous peoples, driven solely by altruistic motives. While many did possess genuine faith and a desire to help, the reality was far more nuanced. Imagine a missionary caught between their spiritual mission and the pressures of colonial authority, where personal ambition and the desire for social status may have influenced their actions. This complexity is often overlooked in broader historical narratives, leading to an oversimplified view of missionaries as solely benevolent figures. Another common myth centers around the belief that the missionaries uniformly succeeded in converting indigenous populations to Christianity. While there were instances of successful conversions, many indigenous peoples resisted or negotiated their interactions with missionaries in ways that allowed them to retain their cultural identity. Picture a vibrant community maintaining its spiritual practices while selectively adopting elements of Christianity. The reality is that conversion was often a complex and contested process, with indigenous peoples exercising agency in shaping their spiritual landscapes. Additionally, the notion that all indigenous peoples were uniformly hostile to missionaries is another oversimplification. While there were certainly instances of resistance, there were also examples of cooperation and collaboration. Imagine a local chief who sees potential benefits in working with missionaries, engaging in dialogue that promotes mutual understanding. The relationships formed between missionaries and local leaders often varied widely, reflecting the diverse responses of indigenous populations to the presence of foreign missionaries. Furthermore, the myth of the lost indigenous culture is often perpetuated by narratives that portray missionaries as solely responsible for cultural erosion. While missionary activity did lead to significant changes, it is essential to recognize the resilience of indigenous cultures that adapted and transformed rather than disappeared. Picture a community that evolves its traditions, incorporating new elements while preserving core aspects of its identity. This adaptability challenges the notion of a linear narrative of cultural loss, emphasizing that cultures are dynamic and continually influenced by their contexts. As we unpack these myths, we are reminded of the importance of critical thinking and nuance in understanding history. The stories of 18th century Spanish missionaries should not be reduced to simplistic narratives. Instead, they invite us to engage with the complexities of human interaction, power dynamics, and cultural exchange. By acknowledging the multifaceted nature of these relationships, we can foster a more accurate understanding of the past. Moreover, addressing these myths opens the door for a more inclusive narrative that honors the voices and experiences of indigenous peoples. Picture an indigenous elder recounting the stories of resilience and adaptation within their community, highlighting how they navigated the challenges posed by missionary presence. Incorporating these perspectives enriches our understanding of history and underscores the importance of recognizing diverse voices in shaping cultural narratives. As we reflect on the enduring myths surrounding 18th century missionaries, it becomes clear that history is not merely a collection of facts but a tapestry woven from varied experiences and interpretations. Myths can serve as both a lens through which we view the past and a barrier to understanding its complexities. By critically examining these narratives, we can engage with history in a more meaningful way, appreciating the richness of human experience and the interplay of culture and identity. In conclusion, the myths surrounding 18th century Spanish missionaries challenge us to rethink our understanding of history. They invite us to embrace complexity, recognizing that the past is a mosaic of narratives shaped by diverse peoples and experiences. As we move forward in our exploration of these missionaries' legacies, let us carry with us the awareness that history is a living conversation, constantly evolving with each new voice added to the dialogue. As we reach the final chapter of our exploration into the lives of 18th century Spanish missionaries, it's time to contemplate the surprisingly simple yet profound aspects of their existence and the enduring lessons we can draw from their experiences. Imagine yourself standing in a sunlit mission courtyard, where the sounds of laughter, prayers, and labor harmonize into a symphony of daily life. The simplicity of their routines, intertwined with moments of struggle and triumph, offers us insights into the human experience that resonate even today. At the heart of the missionaries' lives was a commitment to faith and community. Picture the missionaries rising with the sun, gathering for morning prayers that set the tone for their day. Each prayer was a moment of reflection, grounding them in their purpose and reminding them of the importance of their mission. This ritual highlights the power of routine in establishing a sense of belonging and identity, a lesson we can apply in our own lives as we seek to create meaningful practices that connect us to our values and communities. The missionaries' daily lives were characterized by labor, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to their work. Imagine the sight of missionaries laboring alongside indigenous peoples in these fields, planting crops that would nourish their bodies and sustain their communities. This shared labor created a bond among individuals, fostering connections that transcended cultural divides. In our fast-paced world, where technology often distances us from one another, the simplicity of shared work reminds us of the importance of collaboration and community building. Moreover, the missionaries' willingness to adapt and learn from indigenous cultures speaks volumes about the value of humility and open-mindedness. Picture a missionary taking the time to learn a local language, striving to understand the intricacies of a culture that may seem foreign at first glance. This willingness to engage with and respect the perspectives of others serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of listening and learning in our interactions with diverse communities. In a world that often seems polarized, embracing curiosity and cultural sensitivity can foster deeper understanding and connection. The missionaries' experiences also highlight the significance of resilience in the face of adversity. Imagine a missionary grappling with illness, isolation, or cultural challenges, yet finding the strength to persevere in their mission. This resilience, forged through hardship, reminds us that our journeys are often marked by obstacles that can either deter us or serve as catalysts for growth. Embracing challenges as opportunities for learning can transform our perspectives and empower us to navigate life's complexities with greater grace. In addition to their struggles, the missionaries' ability to form meaningful relationships with indigenous communities presents a valuable lesson about the power of connection. Picture moments of laughter shared over meals, stories exchanged around fires, and collaborations that transcend cultural boundaries. These relationships flourished because, at their core, they were built on mutual respect and understanding. In our interconnected world, these relationships we cultivate with others, whether in our personal lives or broader communities, can have a profound impact on our collective well-being and sense of belonging. As we reflect on the legacies of these missionaries, we must also consider the enduring relevance of their experiences in contemporary society. The complexities of cultural exchange, the struggle for identity, and the quest for understanding endure in our modern context. The lessons gleaned from the past serve as reminders of the importance of empathy, respect, and adaptability in our interactions with others. Moreover, the missionaries' experiences invite us to critically engage with our own histories and the narratives we carry forward. Just as the missionaries navigated their roles within the colonial framework, we too must reflect on our positions within our communities and the responsibilities we hold in shaping histories that honor diverse voices. recognizing the complexities of our past encourages us to be mindful of the narratives we perpetuate and the legacies we leave for future generations. In conclusion, the surprisingly simple yet profound aspects of the lives of 18th century Spanish missionaries offer us valuable insights into the human experience. Their commitment to faith, community, resilience, and connection serves as a testament to the enduring power of relationships and cultural exchange. As we carry forward the lessons learned from their journeys, let us embrace the complexities of our own lives, celebrating the diversity of our experiences and the richness of our shared humanity. As we conclude this journey, may we reflect on the stories of those who came before us, recognizing that history is not merely a sequence of events but a vibrant tapestry woven from the lives of countless individuals. Together, let us honor the legacies of the past while embracing the possibilities of the future, fostering connections that transcend cultural boundaries and celebrating the beauty of diversity in our shared human experience.